Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. And, we have all sorts of great guests that we have along the way. But this is one that's, as a farm boy, really hits home as something that is going to be exciting for those of us in Kansas, because it talks about a new type of wheat that maybe you haven't heard about before. If you've been driving around Ellis County, Saline County, any parts of Kansas, you've seen some wheat growing, and it looks like it's going to be close to harvest here pretty soon. So we have a new grain we're going to talk about. Our guest today is James Bowden, and he has a product called Sustain-A-Grain. James, thanks for taking time to visit with us today.
Good morning, Gary. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Tell us about this new. It's called Kernza, but
That's
what is
right.
Kernza?
Yeah, so Kernza is a perennial grain. It was developed here in Kansas. In fact, it was developed in Salina, Kansas, which it makes it kind of a unique thing for us. Kernza was developed from intermediate wheatgrass. It was bred over time to increase the grain size so that it can be more suitable for human consumption. So we typically think of intermediate wheatgrass as a forage crop for cattle, but during the 80s at the Rodale Institute, this was identified as one of the or the top of a selection of 100 plants that could be used for human consumption. And so when they selected that, then they started that breeding program, and now we have this thing that's both good for forage, but also is a quality human cereal grain that we can now find around Kansas and around the U.S.
Well, let's talk about, a lot of people may not understand the perennial aspect of this versus those that like this typical wheat that you plant every year. You have to go through the whole. Anymore, I used to plow. We had the big 3-bottom, 4-bottom plow. We used to plow all over the place and then till the land. Now it's the cropping is more of the extendable cropping, where people are going out and doing a different type of land management than what I did. But in this particular case, this would grow year after year, and I can see why it took so long to get to this point. But tell me about that development process. Who did that, and how long has it taken to get to a product that is, say, commercial ready?
Sure. And you're right. Farming has progressed over time. Everybody used to plow, and people started to see their soils beginning to fail. You're starting to reach some of those lower depths that don't hold as much nutrients. So people started to shift their kind of thought process about how we are farming. That led to no-till. Everybody's no-tilling now, and we're seeing a lot of good things from no-till, at least keeping soil from eroding. But really, the ultimate no-till is not having to till at all, because your plant comes back year after year after year. And so when we think about trying to hold the soil in place, we got to have living cover on the soil. We got to have roots in the soil. And that's because we're trying to hold these nutrients that are required so that we can grow it, so that we can make sure our food system is stable over time. We have some longevity within our food system. And when Wes Jackson at the Land Institute back in the 70s, really trying to figure out what the problem in agriculture is, or even the problem of agriculture. Agriculture is a really good thing for us. We produce food, we feed a lot of people, but a lot of times it's at the expense of our environment. And what they were seeing was that at Konza Prairie, you go out on this beautiful, unplowed, unbroken prairie, all of these plants are there year round, year after year, and they're in excellent condition. They come back whether there's wind or fire or heavy rains or drought. and yet we still have this stable ecosystem. And so they took that idea back to the Land Institute and thought, well, if we are implementing perennials into our farming practices, this is something that we can maintain our lands and make sure that we're able to produce food into the future without jeopardizing our environment.
Well, I love that. Did you wake up? Were you born thinking about this?
uh, I don't know. I over time, there's everything you do in your life, you develop kind of a perspective or an ethic around. And I think I started my land ethic out with my dad hunting in the CRP fields, seeing the wildlife, seeing the morning dew on the ground, seeing the deer uh, doing their daily thing. And that's something I really value. And I think every time you go through one of these life events and you learn about what's important to you, especially about the world around you, I think you've developed that over time. And I think that I've developed that over time, based in all of the farming practices, all of the different places I've seen, and that's why I'm where I am today.
Well, you're part of the Land Institute, and some people probably don't know about that. But this process is as I read, has taken 11 growing seasons and a bunch of computers to get to this point. That had to be an interesting process, James, because you take it just you just didn't develop that out in the field and go find it, but it has been engineered over years. That had to be fascinating.
Well, grain domestication has changed so much from 10,000 years ago. When we as a people, as a population, as human Homo sapiens, first started gathering grain, we were always gathering the grain that's maybe the largest seed or came back during drought years, et cetera, et cetera. And that's developed over time where we can actually start to identify which plants are the best to cross with each other. And all the breeding happening at the Land Institute, specifically with Kernza, is happening through traditional breeding methods. Now, where the technology comes in is we've been able to start using genetic selection by taking those genetics of each plant and making sure that they have the genes in them that we're interested in continuing into further into our breeding program.
So are farmers, because ultimately farmers will take this and use it for to form a different crop. Is there money in it yet? Are farmers excited about this type of thing?
I think farmers are excited about it, and so much so that we have to say, hold on, guys, we don't want to get the cart before the horse. We want to make sure that we have stable markets in place so that when farmers do get into it, they have a place to sell it. So we are actively looking for places to sell Kernza and make sure that uh, when they do actually plant it and get into it, they can go straight to a location, drop it off, and it's basically already sold. No, and they're ready to go.
Now, is this profitable yet? Because any farm kid that's been out there, you take some grain, you chew it up to see how it tastes, and all of that. Is Kernza have that same taste? Is it close to what a wheat is?
Curds is great. In fact, it's got a couple extra flavors in there that I think are really delicious. When you bake it into a bread or if you roast it, and there we have it in a flake form, you can really notice kind of a cinnamon, hint of cinnamon, and then you also get this kind of subtle honey flavor that comes through. And so it's a really delicious grain. It's um, very adjacent to the flavor of wheat with just a little hint of delicious, I guess.
Well, delicious is always good, and especially if you can put it in bread. Sustain a grain. Now, is that a name? Is that a commercial name for this, or is this the company that you have that is you put behind this to actually market and tell the story about Kernza?
Sure. So Sustainagrain is a company that was developed by two farmers out of Mound Ridge, and they saw this opportunity through the Land Institute. We've got these perennial grains, but what good does a perennial grain do if it's not getting into people's kitchens or into people's stomachs? So they formed this partnership and became Sustainagrain. And from 2018 until now, they've been operating, trying to build the market. And we've come on, there's a couple other team members, myself included, came on more recently to try to enhance that effort. It always helps when you got somebody by your side trying to push something forward. So we've got a really robust team out there trying to get the grain on the market and see what we can do with it.
I want to hear more about this, what you can do with it, where you go to get it, the pricing, some of that stuff. Stay with us. Guest today is James Bowden, and James is working with Sustainagrain, an unusual grain product that could change the way we farm here in the Midwest. Back with more after this.
Since 1776, the United States of America continues to stand tall. It's been tested before, many times. Through grit and the ability to move forward, we create better tomorrows. We help our clients live their best lives to and through retirement. We make it easier. Thank you, Kansas. Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever, leading in challenging times. Our guest is James Bowden, and James is with Sustainagrain and a new grain called Kernza that actually is a perennial grain that will grow year after year. Tastes much like we talked about that. But James, tell me this. If you're a farmer, can you raise 60 bushel Kernza? Is it the same type of crop that you can raise if you fertilize it and do all of those things?
It has very much the same life cycle as winter wheat. It is currently in the breeding program. We are currently trying to improve the yield on it. Right now, we're about a third the yield of annual wheat, but we're trying to get there. That's why the Land Institute exists. That's why these breeding programs exist. But again, like I said, it's the same life cycle as annual wheat. So you plant in the fall, it goes through the winter, goes dormant, and then comes back. And then it's harvested around mid-July, beginning of August. And then once it's harvested, you apply fertilizer in the fall, a little more in the spring, and then you harvest again the next year. It's very, very similar to wheat. It just reduces the number of preparation steps required to make it happen.
One of the concerns that people have with farming methods now are some of the chemicals that are used all the time. Do you have to use chemicals with this to keep the weeds out, or does it pretty much take over the whole field?
So what's so great about Kernza is that the root system is really prolific. So when you think about wheat versus Kernza has about 100 times more root biomass than wheat. So when it gets in there, it will choke out any of the other weeds that would tend to come up in a wheat stand, which makes it really nice because you don't have to apply any herbicides. You do have to have, most plants need nitrogen. All plants need nitrogen. I take that back. We got our legumes producing their own, but you still have to apply nitrogen, and that's part of the deal with farming. But I think it's a really good option for reducing the amount of chemical that you are applying, and then having some sort of stable habitat. When we talk about annual farming, every year we go in and disrupt that ecosystem by tillage or through applying chemical. And in this situation, it's much less so. and sometimes not non-existent at all. So it's a good thing.
James, do you have this little secret kitchen in the back that you're back with? A couple sacks of Sustainagrain or Kernza, and you're trying to figure out things you can do with Sustainagrain.
We've really done a good job of connecting with local partners. We've reached out to people that know what they're doing in the food business, whether they are brewers or local co-ops or bakeries, anybody that is interested in creating some sort of a value-added product with Kernza. And they've done such a good job coming up with different ideas. In Minneapolis, Kansas, we've got the Farm and Odd Fellows. They came out with a beer called 10-Foot Roots. And in Salina, we've been partnering with the bakeries and Prairie Land Market, which is kind of our local food co-op. And then Barolo Grill has taken some of the products that we have designed and then incorporated them into their menus. So these are all different ways people have done their part in exploring how to utilize Kernza and where it kind of fits into their business.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity to take a look at this from both the retail side of it and the crop side of it. And depends on where you are in your farming cycle as a career. This seems to me to be a good way to have a very low energy type of effort to go out and raise a crop every year. But you have to have that market and that market to be able to sell this and at a price where you can continue doing what you're doing. What is the price if you want to buy? If I want to go down, can I go down to the local Dillon store, Walmart store, et cetera, and buy a bag of Kernza?
It's currently not in any of the big box stores yet. And so if we've got any listeners out there that want to help us get us into some of those big box stores across the country, we would love some help with that. But you can get on our website at sustainagrain.com. We have flakes available, noodles, flour, a variety of products that you can pick up. Also, Salina is very much a hub for finding these food products around in different businesses. And then additionally in Kansas City Food Hub has got some of our flakes available. So if you're in the Kansas City area and you are looking for a way to try some Kernza, Kansas City Food Hub might be your best outlet.
So you say flakes, flour. Everyone understands the flour part. Are flakes like Frosted Flakes? Is this Kernza like a
No.
breakfast flake, or is this a flake more like something you'd get when you produce oats?
Yeah, so it is very much a something like oats, and so it's flaked, looks just like oats, just a little bit smaller, a little bit darker, but it kind of behaves like a steel cut oat, and very, very good for breakfast, and really works well incorporating into different dishes. And what I really like to do, no bake cookies with Kerns are really great. So treat yourself,
All right. Well, I've never passed a cookie plate, so I like that a bunch. And will follow up myself on trying to figure out how to get some of this to give it a try. Those of us that grow up in Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, we're all aware of wheat and what that does. This is sort of a new generation that you're looking at to grow down the road. What is that long-term goal that you have in the Land Institute for growing Kernza in a sense of making it a more common product?
Yeah, I think the long-term goal, ultimately the goal of Kernza and perennials is to continue kind of a land ethic and making sure that we are caring for the farm, the ground that we farm, and ultimately with the perennials, leaving the ground untilled for as long as possible. So figuring out a way that we can produce food for ourselves without jeopardizing our food system. I think that the way we get there is through innovators, community innovators, people that are really interested in doing something different with the food system. And then also a lot of our industry partners that are looking for ways that they're in the food industry and they want to help make sure that our food system is as healthy or as quality and last as long as it can, because that directly affects them. So this is a way for them to affect the food system in a positive way and have farmers implement these soil saving practices on their land.
Well, like everybody, shift and change is hard, and this is a real paradigm shift for farmers, much like it is when the no-till came along. People that have been plowing, disking, spring tooth, the whole thing, had to go, boy, I don't know if I can do this without doing all those different things that you see the success that that same land has had to be able to do this, and that could be that next paradigm shift coming down the road. James, thanks so much for sharing this with us. It's an interesting process that you guys have put in place. How do people find you or find Sustainagrain and more information after the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get some Kernza products or just find out about Sustainagrain in general, if you go to sustainagrain.com, that is the site that we do most of our retail business through. If you want to contact me directly, my email is james@sustainagrain.com. I'll just repeat it, james@sustainagrain.com. And either of those will get you in contact with me or someone that can help you learn more about Kernza, help you get it into your food business, or talk about maybe what the benefits of implementing Kernza on your land are.
James, thanks for joining us. I hope to hear more about this. I'm going to go check out your website and see what's out there for the flakes and et cetera. It just sounds interesting to me to see that new opportunity out there for our Kansas farms. It may not be for today, but it's certainly one of those things that could be that long-term solution in certain situations to be able to make that happen. So thanks for joining us, James.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
James Bowden with Sustainagrain and a new grain called Kernza that would allow us to have sustainable product in the wheat fields, now called Kernza fields. That'd be interesting. Thanks for listening to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. Our program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.